The TLDR of this video is that I had a problem and LLMs helped me solve it. I had large amounts of structured data contained within unstructured text. LLMs helped me extract that data, format it in a consistent way, translating when necessary, and writing dates in a specified format for use in a database. The rest of this video will explain how I came to do that, so if this was your interest, you can stop watching now. So this began a few years ago, 2017. I was writing an article about witchcraft trials in today's Colombia and Cuba. And my main interest at the beginning was that the defendants were all African slaves. But then, as I was finishing my writing of this article, I had access to a database called Actos, which had been made by a group of French, Chilean, and Spanish researchers over a period of 23 years. This is a database of royal officials, church officials, and other notables in Spain and the Spanish Empire. And as I tried to look up the bishops, the inquisitors, the prosecutors, and other persons who were named in the documents, I realized that the people who were actually conducting these trials, who were managing these trials, all had a common background. They had all at some point passed through the Basque country in northern Spain. Some of them were born there, some of them have worked there, some of them have studied there, but all of them have been there before coming to America. This was significant because in the years before these trials on Cuba and in Colombia, the world's biggest witch hunt was being conducted precisely in the Basque country in northern Spain. So having access to this database, which was based on printed sources, not archival sources, I suddenly could change my entire focus for the article and for my research. So this has nothing to do with LLMs, but this changed a few years later because I was embarking on a new research project in collaboration with a Danish colleague from the University of Southern Denmark. And what we are doing on this project is that we are trying to see how the king's will, as expressed in a witchcraft statute from 1617, resulted in concrete trials. We wanted to see how do we go from a will expressed by the king to actual trials in areas controlled by his officials. Who among the officials, because this law is also directly mentioning them and their responsibility to bring these trials to court. So who among them are doing this? Who are active in trials? Who are perhaps not visible in the trials, but you can see many trials taking place within their areas of responsibility? And who is actually not doing anything? And what are their backgrounds? Now, as you can see, this is exactly where the kind of database that Actos is would be useful. So I wanted a database of royal officials. So I took the empty structure, which Jean-Pierre Didier was kind enough to allow me to use, from the Spanish project, and then I started adding data about royal officials in Denmark and Norway and Iceland. The problem was that building Actos had taken them 23 years. I don't have 23 years, I'll be retired by then. And what's more, this research project is only running for 4 years. So I had a problem. I had an empty database, I had printed sources because we have historical biographical encyclopedias. We have lists of military officials, of custom officials, of priests, of bishops, and so on. So we can now assemble this database. We have the text in machine-readable format, but how can we do it? Because it's very labor-intensive. Now, of course, you understand that this is something that's perfect for an LLM, but I hadn't even heard about them before. And then ChatGPT was published. And I realized that, okay, this may be the perfect tool, because what ChatGPT seemed to be very good at was transforming text. So I tried. I gave it a short biography, and I asked it to format personal events or events happening to persons in that biography, and output it as a CSV file with the structure of person, event, place, date of beginning, and of date of end. And it did an okay job. It wasn't perfect, but I mean, it was a first try. So okay, I had a tool, it was usable, but it was still labor intensive, because I would have to copy thousands and thousands of biographies and CSVs and edit the CSVs afterwards. And then I discovered that OpenAI had an API that I could use. So I could write a small Python script and send individual files to OpenAI and get CSV files back. Great improvement. Now I can automate this to a much higher degree. So I tested it with a few biographies, wrote a little script, and it worked. Same as ChatGPT. Same limitation, it wasn't perfect. And the context window was so small that it was really problematic. I very often got errors because of that, but I had something that worked. So I paid for this out of my own pocket, because the university doesn't have funding for this when you work in the humanities, or if they will give you funding, then you have to wait for months after you send in an application. And I'm a nerd, so I just wanted to get this done. So I sat down Friday afternoon, then I downloaded 19 volumes of the Danish biographical encyclopedia. I removed as many of the semicolons and commas as I could get rid of, because of the context window, to get the text short enough. I tried to write out as many as possible of the abbreviations, because these old encyclopedias had many abbreviations because paper was expensive. And then I divided every volume into individual biographies, so that each biography was a separate file. I eliminated all those biographies that were previous to the period that was interesting to me, which is 1500 to 1814, and all those that were later. And then I put aside all of those biographies that were clearly too long for the context window. And then I started my script. And it chugged along. It threw a lot of errors. Sometimes because the file was still too long for the context window, or the service timeout, or something else happened. So I had to restart it several times during the evening. I was up a couple of times during the night when I restarted it. I kept restarting it throughout the day on Saturday, a couple of times on the night Sunday, and all day Sunday. And then Sunday evening, it had gone through all my files. And I had 60,000 entries. Now, to put this into a context, Octoth had been built in 23 years and had 660,000 entries. I had now 60,000 entries in 2 days. It wasn't perfect. It needed editing, but it was clear that this is the future. To me, at least, this was clear. This is the future. And I knew, of course, that this would only get better. I mean, the models would obviously get better. My own prompting would get better. And the results in the future would get better. And the most important thing is that I had converted all 19 volumes, or almost all 19 volumes, all those interesting to me, to 60,000 entries for $120. So it was quite clear to me what I would have to do to make this database. And then, of course, things have changed. I mean, the models have gotten better, the context windows have gotten bigger so that I can use all files. But I have eventually gone from using OpenAI solutions to using my own fine-tuned models based on Meta's Llama series. The reason for that is basically that I could get the similar result from a fine-tuned Llama as I can get from a fine-tuned GPT 3.5. But the main advantages of using an open model is that I can share it with anyone. I can publish it. I can put it as a scientific publication, if you will. Anyone can use it with no cost to me if they find it useful. I know that it's available to me 3, 4, 5 years from now. I don't know that about OpenAI's model. If I fine-tune an OpenAI model now, can I use it in 3 years' time? I don't know. I have no guarantee. But in this case, I do. They are cheaper to fine-tune, not necessarily to run because you need expensive hardware to do that, but you can rent hardware relatively inexpensively to fine-tune. And once you have the data set, then you can fine-tune any model you want. Finally, if you are going to have very large amounts of data, then it probably is cheaper. But I mean, for me, the two biggies are I can share it, I can publish it, it's available to anyone who wants to use a database structure like the one that we made, and I can use it myself 5 years from now. So that's why I decided to stop using OpenAI's products for this, even though it's not too expensive for me, even though it's much easier to use. I still prefer to use Meta's Codellama because it has a bigger context window than the Llama 2 models for doing this. And it's been a really great pleasure fine-tuning and making this model. And I know that this is just the beginning for me. I will certainly fine-tune and make more models. Now, in other videos, I'll talk about other things that I have done with LLMs, but this is really how it all started for me. And it is by far the biggest undertaking I have used LLMs for so far. Thank you for watching. Take care. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.